What is good, y'all? My name is Sharp, and today I'm going to share with you how I scored in the 100th percentile on the MCAT and tell you exactly how you can do the same. Myself, I recall when I was getting started prior to my prep, I watched quite a number of these videos, and I, as any neurotic pre-med would, sifted through probably hundreds of Reddit posts detailing best MCAT study schedule, best MCAT resources, how I scored X score. And so my goal today is to consolidate all of that and provide you a simplified study schedule that I wish I would have had when I was going into my prep. So before we dive into the step-by-step schedule, the obvious important question is, how long are you going to prep? And for me, that was 3 months. And at that time, I was scribing 1 to 2 days per week and doing research 1 to 2 half days per week. So what that looked like for me was 4 to 5 dedicated MCAT study days per week for 3 months. And I found this to be ideal and sustainable. I would advise anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on your personal commitments, responsibilities. But in any case, do your best to carve out as much time as possible during your designated prep season and try to clean your plate as much as possible of other obligations. Now, before I hop into the actual schedule, I want to preface this by saying that I started very far from where I finished. And by that, I mean a little over a year out from my exam. I took a half-length diagnostic test and scored a 506. And I remember my chemistry physics section being, I think, in the 7th percentile, pretty abysmal. So I knew I had my work cut out for me, and ultimately I scored a 524. So, which is the 100th percentile. So, a 99th percentile in chemistry. So without further ado, let's get into it, and let's start with the first phase, which is content review. So you're going to want to begin by grabbing a set of review books. I personally recommend and use Kaplan's 7-book set. Looks just like this, with the caveat that you're going to want to drop the Psychology, Sociology book and the CARS book. These are not the most time-effective resources for these subjects. I will get to what you'll instead want to use in just a moment. But how you'll want to work through these books is I took 3 of them, did them in parallel. That way I could pair, say, physics and Gen Chem, which I am not particularly keen on, with biology, which I enjoy, just to keep things interesting and fun in a sense, if you could call it that. And then I did the latter 2 books because we're doing 5 out of the 7 in parallel together, right? Which was organic chem and biochem. To me, it just made sense to do Gen Chem first before you're going to do either of those. And so these books are quite long in total. I think it's like maybe 2,500 pages between all of them. So you're really going to only pass through them once. So what that means is you're going to want to understand everything to the best that you can on the first time. You're not going to remember everything. You can, depending on your own preference, take notes. You're likely never going to refer back to these notes, so just know that. But for me, I like to write things down to kind of spend a few extra seconds juggling a concept in my head. It just helps me to like work through my thoughts. So there are also some questions at the end of each chapter that I did do all of, but in hindsight, if I were to do things over, I would not do them. You can if you want to, but I say that simply for the reason that they're not the most representative of MCAT's style of questions. They're very detail-oriented and probably not the most time-efficient sort of question. I didn't finish other resources that are better, such as UWorld. So I think saving that time to put into, say, UWorld questions probably will give you more return. But by all means, do the questions if you want a little extra practice with that particular chapter that you feel weak in. Now, once you finish all 5 books, the next thing that you have yet to cover is Psychology, Sociology. And there is one resource that is comprehensive and is really all you need to get a 132, a perfect score in Psychology, Sociology, as I did. And what that is Khan Academy made some videos in conjunction with the AAMC. They partnered up with them, and those are the people who make the MCAT, right? So it stands to reason that it would be pretty representative. So they made some videos of every topic in psychology, sociology that you need to know, and some great people on Reddit, on the pre-med forum, documented those in transcript form So I will link that in the description. It is called the 86-page document, as well as the 300-page document. Same thing on each. 300 just goes in a little bit more depth. I personally, what I did was I went through the 86-page document, and any topics that didn't make sense to me, I watched the video in addition to the document. This is all you need for Psych-Soc, as I said. And the final resource I used for content review was Memm. Memm is a spaced repetition based software, very, very similar to Anki, modeled off of Anki, that is already pre-made for you for the MCAT specifically. Now, it can be a little bit pricey. I believe the base price is close to $100 for a month. However, if you qualify for the fee assistance program for the AAMC, Memm will likewise give you a discount, which I was lucky enough to qualify for. However, the reason I chose Memm over Anki was not that Anki is necessarily inferior, but rather Memm is tailored for the MCAT and is pre-made. I've never used Anki before, so I wanted to save that time of becoming proficient in Anki and optimizing all my settings and getting adept in it. So that way I went with Memm, saved, let's say, a day or two in preparation for Anki. But I will say this, whether you use Memm or Anki, so long as you are proficient and adept at Anki and maybe spend a day watching videos to optimize your settings, Anki is just as good as Memm. However, if you want to save an entire 12 hours or whatever preparing your Anki, you're gonna have to use it in med school anyway. But then Memm is a great option. Now, the biggest benefit of Memm as opposed to Anki for me was that with each card you had a corresponding sheet just below it. So as you learn each fact in isolation with that card, you're also learning it in context and can see and reference all of the other pertinent facts within that system. So what I did with Memm was I first went through all of the sheets subject by subject. Any facts I hadn't already well learned from Kaplan, I wrote them down a little bit just to ingrain them a bit more, and then I did the cards corresponding to that subject, that particular section within that subject. I did those cards to get them into circulation. If you know a card very well, suspend the card. There's no point in ever looking at it again. That way, I at least had one pass through the cards. Now that I'm going into practice phase, and as I go into practice and start doing questions and exams, I am using I'm using Memm rather as a daily, repetition, just maybe an hour a day to refresh all of those facts and keep from forgetting them. So you could use Memm. I find it great. You're gonna save a little bit of time, spend a little bit more money. I find it to be worth it. Now, another thing I probably would have done in hindsight was, in particular, I would recommend downloading the Jack Sparrow deck, which has cards sorted per Kaplan section. And in hindsight, what I would have done with that is, as you're going through the Kaplan book, and you finish each section, take that deck and do the cards for that chapter. That way you get them in the circulation and you're not going to forget those chapters. That would be a really, really effective way if you want to cover all the content gaps and be comprehensive in your knowledge. All right, so two very important things that I did not mention originally, and I'm going to add in here at the end of your content phase. And really, the first one, as you go through your content phase, create a sheet of a list of mnemonics, and any things that seem particularly important or high yield, amino acids, for example. I would type in Reddit amino acids mnemonics, all right, on Google. Somebody has made some mnemonic already, and I would find the one that I like the most or that stuck with me the most. The more ridiculous, probably the better. I really had never used mnemonics in undergrad, but with the sheer amount of content on the MCAT, it can be invaluable. I will link my Google Doc of mnemonics, all of them together, in the description. I think it's a really condensed, really high yield version, so I think that'll help you a lot, so check that out. And then the second thing is to, at the end of your content, when you're going through Memm, right, you're going through the Memm sheets. Also, so I did Memm, and then as I'm going through that, the stuff that I really didn't know, I put into sort of a master sheet. I also looked at the Kaplan master sheet, which comes with the books, and on Reddit, the Miles Down master sheet. I took those three together and I made my own master sheet. So anything that I wanted to reference back, often it was like physics equations that I just could not remember. I put it on there so I could like easily know where it is and look back at it later when I'm practicing, all right? So you should aim to finish all of this content in 1 to 1.5 months, and now you can start practicing. So that leaves you with 1.5 to 2 months for practice, which I recommend kicking off with Next Step / Blueprint, I think is their new name, their full-length exam, which is free. I took this as soon as I finished content, and this will allow you to gauge your weaknesses, your strengths, and get a sense of what the exam is going forward with practice in terms of timing and difficulty roughly. I've heard that this company, which is Blueprint, is the most representative third-party company, meaning that it is the most similar to the actual AAMC full lengths, right? So get started with that. Take that exam. I got a 5.11, and I realized I was pretty weak in chem phys, particularly physics and psychology, sociology. So now your next step, which will be kind of the bulk of your practice, will be with UWorld. You may have heard of UWorld. UWorld is a phenomenal, I would say the second best resource for the MCAT. So UWorld is a 2,000 question bank, and it's a bit on the pricey side, but as I said, it is the second best MCAT resource that you will find, second to the actual AAMC material, right? So the beauty of UWorld is in the explanations. And as I said, there are 2,000 questions, and each question has a very thorough, comprehensive explanation with often beautiful figures. Actually, in fact, always has a great figure. So I actually know people who have solely used UWorld for content and have entirely dropped the review books, which I think can be a viable strategy. But if you're looking to score at the upper echelon, 520 plus, you definitely want to cover all your content bases, right? So with UWorld, now that you've somewhat roughly identified your weaknesses with that practice exam, for me it was psych, soc, and physics really that I drilled with UWorld. Just do 7 question, maybe 14 or 21 question blocks. No need to time them. I wouldn't even worry about that. Use it, do them slow, do them right, and pay particular attention to the explanations. And that's where you will see enormous gains. So UWorld, maybe spend two weeks or so doing that, as many questions as you can cover. You likely won't get through all of them. If you do, you're going to be golden. I only think I got through maybe only 900. I targeted my weaknesses. No need, minimum effective dose. Do what will get you the results you want. And if you don't have time for all of it, you don't need to do everything, right? So, boom, UWorld, you took that practice exam, you did UWorld. Now, you move in to the holy grail of MCAT resources, which is AAMC material, right? So, there's a few different components of AAMC material. I would say there's 5 practice tests, right? So, I would say take the first practice test, which is the unscored. It is the least representative of the real new MCAT, but it is still very much in line with the content that you're going to see on it. So it's still a great tool. So take first the unscored exam, and with each exam, the subsequent day, spend just as much time as you took taking the exam to review thoroughly your exam. Some people will say every question. What I learned over time was that go over just the ones you missed and the ones you flagged, but be liberal with your flagging in a sense. If you have any doubt, and the real test, you want to be flag only questions that you can, come back to in time. But on the practice test, flag if you have any kind of doubt. That way, you're not wasting your time reviewing the questions that you knew very well and were confident in. But anything you had some doubt in, you're going to go the next day and do a deep dive. And that brings me to another point. With every question that you miss or that you don't understand, type in on Google, let's say AAMC FL4, full length 4, Q43, maybe add in Reddit to the end. And 9 times out of 10, somebody has already posted and other people have already answered that question on Reddit. So if you don't understand the explanation that is given by AAMC, somebody else probably has explained it better online. So that goes for all resources, really, all of the AAMC different resources. So yeah, you've done UWorld. Now you're gonna take roughly one AAMC full length a week, and the subsequent day you will review it. That's where an enormous amount of gains will be made. I promise you, like maybe a point or two per full length is really what I saw. Of course, that can also be attributed to what I'm about to describe, which is, so your week might look like a Saturday you take the exam, Sunday you review it, and then this is where you move into the other AAMC resources, which you're interspersing the exams with. So in between the exams, you're going to want to do in this order roughly: the question banks, the Q banks, right? First, these are not the most representative. They are from the old MCAT, but still they are exactly the content you will see. They're not exactly in the style that you'll see it in, right? So Q banks, the bio ones in particular are not the most representative. So I only did the first bio Q bank, not the second one. And the cars, however, are invaluable. All right. And that brings me to my point on cars. So AAMC cars, the official MCAT cars, has a very particular type of logic that they use. And it is rare that third-party companies replicate this sort of logic. And so I think that investing a lot of time into, let's say Kaplan cars or Blueprint even cars is not the best use of your time. Really what you want to spend a lot of time on is the cars Q pack. That is an invaluable resource. However, I will say I did not use it because I was scoring. Cars was always my best section. It's the hardest one to improve, I would say. And hence I felt I was running out of time. I could better invest it and see bigger improvements in those other sections. But if you are looking to get your cars up, stick with the AAMC stuff. All right. Quality over quantity. And in brief, I could probably do another video on this, but in brief, my car strategy was read the passage thoroughly first. Don't leave the questions beforehand. That's really not a great strategy. Read thoroughly the passage, and when you get to the questions, if you really spend your time, because most of the car's questions are theme or mood or perspective or big picture based, right? So you need to go through the whole passage in fullness in order to get those ideas out of it. So once you go to the questions, oftentimes with that strategy, I know it sounds very, very basic, but the questions will feel like rather simple. Like you will know, you might not often, more times than not, you won't even have to look back at the passage, which will save you a lot of time. So slow down the passage so that you can speed up on the questions. That's sort of my philosophy. I was always scoring 130s, 131s in cars. However, it was my lowest on the real exam because I spent so much time gaining points on those other sections. So yeah. All right, so back to the order of resources. Q packs first, do them, review them. Maybe with all of these resources, maybe refer back to Memm or deep dive on some YouTube video on a particular topic that you're weak in. And while you're going through this, you're using Memm every day, 1 to 2 hours, or Anki, same thing. All right, so you did Q packs, and then again, still taking one full length a week. You're gonna do the last thing after all the Q packs is the section banks, the AAMC section banks. The section banks are invaluable. They are the holy grail second to the full lengths, and some say even better than the full lengths in terms of the newest MCAT tests and content. So yeah, section banks, really take your time. They're actually even a little bit more difficult than the full length material. They sort of represent like the hardest type of questions you will see on a full length. Hence, I would recommend not doing them timed. It's gonna be difficult. You're gonna be rushing it, and they're too precious to rush through, right? So take your time with the section banks. Maybe do 25 or 50 questions a day in between your full lengths, right? So now you're probably 2 weeks out even, and the section banks and you've done the Q Packs, you've done a bulk of UWorld, and you're doing section banks, you're doing exams. If you finish the section banks and you say you have 2 weeks, just continue on with your one exam per week schedule, and instead of the section banks, incorporate whatever UWorld questions you have left. So you're still practicing. It never hurts to get more UWorld in. You're always going to be widening your base of knowledge from that. At this point, you've done all the work. You're maybe a week or two out from the exam, and you may have 1 to 2 more practice exams left. At this point, stay the course. Get some UWorld in. Maybe consult your old master sheets that I mentioned as you're continuing to still reinforce the content with Memm or Anki. All right, and another thing that I did not mention, with all your practice tests, you want to start them at the time that you will be taking your real exam. For me, that was 7:30 a.m. So simulate test conditions as much as possible. Do not pause the practice exams while you're taking them. Can be difficult, but you need to build your stamina, your endurance, because it's a very, very tiring exam. I would recommend at the midway point maybe having a low to moderate caffeine drink, unless you're super addicted to coffee. That's your own thing. And if it works for you, it works for you. I've had phases where I'm kind of dependent, and I'm not, but I got a yerba mate. I think 70, 80 milligrams of caffeine. I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine, because I noticed on the psych social in the final section, which is really the easiest, at least it appears to be, and it's sort of the simplest. Most people enjoy it the most. It's kind of like a break to finish off on. You can get really tired at that point and lose easy points. So the midway point, I drank that for my real exam, and I did on my last 2 practice exams to simulate that. So that gives you 6 total practice exams that you're going to be taking: 5 AAMC, 1 blueprint. Some people will say take 10, take 12. I really don't think that's necessary, and will burn you out in the long run. My philosophy, as I said before, is always quality over quantity. And with this approach, during my practice phase, I saw every test my score would jump 2 to 3 points, pretty linearly actually, until I got to my final score, my final practice test and my real exam. So it was rewarding and motivating to see that progress as you go. And on that note of trusting yourself, realize that your prep is not going to be perfect. You're not going to hit this schedule to a T, and that's okay. It's going to deviate. Life's going to happen. Things are going to be thrown off a day or 2 or a week. For me, a week and a half before my exam, a major hurricane came through, Hurricane Ida, and I remember I was trying to do UWorld that day, and I really wanted to get through all these questions, and I was kind of stressing. But it was a serious hurricane that hit us. Fortunately, we were pretty blessed. No major damage to our house or otherwise. And so that day, power went out, and we slept with no AC. It was summer night. It was hot. Then the next day, the sewage went out. So we had no water, no power. So trying to sleep like that, much less study like that, was close to impossible, but did my best to. And we ended up 2 or 3 days later deciding we needed to get out of town because power would not be out for another, I think it ended up being 10 days, but the original estimates were 2 weeks. So I wasn't sure that my test would even be occurring in the city, which I think ultimately it did not, because power came on like a day before the test. So people's priorities were not, proctoring an exam. So I was, for days at different stays with my family. We were on the road for basically the last week and a half leading up to my exam. So I ended up having to do my final 2 practice exams in a meeting room of a hotel, which was lucky, and then in the closet of our next stay. I locked myself in there, put earbuds in the closet. So you got to make do, and it was stressful, but and it was not perfect. It was not ideal, but nothing's going to be ideal. It may not be that major of a disruption for you, but you're going to have those minor disruptions. Just realize, do your best, stay on course as much as possible, and realistically 1 hour is not going to make the difference, if you in this score versus that score, but having the mindset of trying to do as much as you can is never gonna hurt. So that is all I have today. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, comment below on anything related to the MCAT strategies or whatever. And again, description, gonna have some links, the 86-page document, as well as my mnemonic document. So yeah, man, this test is daunting. It is a lot, but you can overcome it and crush it. Yeah, if you have any further questions, let me know. Got a bug on my camera. And with that, good luck. Although I hesitate to say good luck, as there is no luck involved in this. It's all about the effort you put in. So put in the work. Let's get it. Peace.